Good morning, guys. My name is Jamie, and welcome to Kelowna Cell Repair. What we are going to be working on today is a iPhone 6 Plus with the notorious touch disease issue. What that basically means is the device has no touch input, and generally, if you give this guy a little twist, you'll get the flashing grey bars at the top of the screen. This is a microchip replacement that is required on this device. I'm going to take you guys under the microscope here and show you how it's done. Okay guys, welcome back. So I have the logic board removed here and under the microscope. Now, what we're seeing right now is the front side of the board, and all of this black stuff here is actually called underfill. This covers up lots of components on the front side of the board. Before I can actually go ahead and remove and replace the microchip for touch, I do have to get rid of all of this underfill here first. The reason being is if I don't, the underfill will expand with heat and it will actually move around components on the opposite side of the board here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all this stuff. I'm not going to bore you guys and show you, 10-15 minutes of underfill removal here, so I probably will just edit this and do a little bit of a time lapse just so you guys don't have to watch this for too long. So I'm going to get started on this here, and we'll come back once we have the underfill removed and we're ready to take off the microchip. Okay guys, so we're back. I have all of that underfill removed there, and now we are looking on the opposite side of the logic board. This microchip right here is the microchip that we're going to be removing and replacing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start getting the board warmed up here. I'm going to add in a little bit of flux, and we're going to get this microchip removed here. So we'll get started on this. And for this particular repair, we don't want to go too hot for too long, otherwise you can definitely damage and kill the logic board itself, so we don't want to do that. We're going to take preventative measures to ensure that that doesn't happen. What we like to use around here is some good old-fashioned coins as heat sinks. This is going to stop heat from hitting places where we don't want it to hit. And then with my preheater set to about 100 degrees and my rework station set to about 350 degrees, we're going to go ahead and pull this chip. I'm going to get you guys into focus just a little bit more here. You can't really see too much right now just because of that big blob of flux on there, but you'll definitely be able to see more once we start getting this chip removed. So I'm just going to start bringing up this board to temperature now. And what I like to do is grab a hold of the microchip here and get ready to start removing this guy. So I'm just bringing this board up to temperature. I'm looking for other solder points on the board here to melt, and that's going to tell me that the chip is melted. Just get that guy off right there. I did just nudge a little diode here, so we are going to go in there and rectify that before we go any further. I'm not too sure what that diode is for, but it definitely has a job, and without it being there, obviously it's not going to work properly, so let's just go ahead and rectify that one little spot right there. So I just pulled off that little diode, and I'm just fluffing up the pins here. And then what I'm gonna do is grab this guy, we don't want this little diode with all this solder on here, so I'm just trying to pull it away the best that I can. Just like that. Okay, so we're gonna add our heat sinks back into place. And we're gonna get that diode set in where it needs to be. So that's just right around where it needs to be. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more here for you guys, just so you can see what I'm doing. There is another diode here that is nudged just over here as well, so we'll rectify that as well. I'm really sorry about the shaky camera right now, guys. It's when you're under this kind of magnification, every small bump is gonna feel like an earthquake under the microscope, so I do apologize for that. So we're just gonna heat this guy up and get this little diode melted back into place. You can see the solder starting to melt. This guy should just want to go back into place just like that. At the same time, we're just going to get this guy here put back into place as well. And that guy's back where it needs to be as well. Okay, so now that we rectified our little mistake there, we can carry on with the actual repair. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add in some flux, and we're going to get rid of all of this old solder that was under the Touch IC chip. So I'm just tinning all of these pads and taking away all of that old bad solder and replacing it with my nice low melt solder. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So what I want to do now is I'm going to use some solder wick, and I'm going to clean all of those pads so that they're nice and free of any solder. When we use brand new microchips, they do come with fresh solder balls on the underside of the microchip, so we don't want any solder on here at all. We want to get this guy nice and clean. Okay, so we got those pins cleaned up pretty good here. I am going to take a standard size Q-tip and just give this guy a clean with some alcohol before we go any further. So you can see right now that the microchip that we're replacing here is no bigger than a standard size Q-tip. It has a pretty small microchip that we're having to replace. So what you guys may be able to see here is there's a couple of missing pads underneath this chip. There's just one right here and one right here. Now, I know from experience that those pads are actually no connection pads. They don't offer any kind of purpose. They don't have a job other than just to give structural integrity to the chip. But with this particular repair, the reason why you get the bouncing bars and the no touch sensitivity is there's actually a break in the pad up at the top here. So what we have to do to rectify this is actually run a microscopic jumper here into the trace line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scratch away at the trace line here just to expose it. And then we're going to solder on a nice little microscopic cable just to remake this connection nice and solid. Now we're going to zoom in a little bit more here, guys, so we're going to be getting really, really small. Okay, so the copper that you can see there is the trace line for this pad. Sometimes if you hit hard enough on this pad, because they're loose, they'll just drop off, just like that. I like to get rid of the pad here so that I can kind of make my own pad with the microscopic cable that we're about to use. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a tiny, tiny little bit of flux in here. We're going to tin our trace line there with some solder. So basically we're just adding a little bit of solder to the copper there so that we have something to attach our microscopic cable to. Now, I've never done this repair under the camera before recording it, so I definitely am expecting my nerves to get the better of me here today. And it is first thing on a Monday morning, so that doesn't really help matters. But I'm gonna try my best here, and hopefully we'll be able to get this guy on here nice and firmly. So you guys can see that this is a big clump of copper cable, and this is from a earpiece speaker of an iPhone. So this is really, really, really small copper wire. And what I'm trying to do here is just separate a piece of that copper wire so that I can just get one strand for my jumper.
Okay, no worries. Bye-bye.
So this is a microscopic cable that we're dealing with here, guys. Basically what I've done there is just try to get it lined up with that trace line. And what I'm going to attempt to do now is solder this guy into place. Okay, so it's kind of hard to tell right now because of all the flux. I'm going to grab some more alcohol here and try and give this guy a clean up for you guys just so that you can see a little bit better. Okay, so we have the cable attached to the trace line, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this cable around and try to make a pad out of it. So the way that I do this, just kind of spin this guy around just like so. And now that's about as much as I want on there. I don't want to have too much cable there because it can interfere with the other pads. So we'll just make a little cut where we need to be, and we're gonna adjust this guy into place again. Okay, So that's where we need to be. The last thing that we're going to do here before installing the microchip is I'm going to add some UV mask to the jumper wire that we've added in here. The reason for that is I don't want this guy to move. So UV mask kind of sets like concrete. That's just going to stop that little cable from moving when we're installing the new microchip. Just because we soldered that guy on, when we break out the hot air to install the new microchip, the solder is going to melt. So we want to make sure that that's in a nice firm position and it's not going to move around once we're doing the repair. So I'm going to come back to you guys here once I have this UV mask cured, and then we're going to do the final step, which is reinstalling the microchip. Okay guys, we're back. So we have our UV mask nice and cured here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna zoom in and show you guys that when we touch this stuff now, it's set like concrete. So this little jumper here is not gonna move anywhere. We're not gonna have any kind of issues while we're installing the new microchip. So I'll just get you guys back out into focus here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go ahead and install our brand new chip. So we'll get our heat sinks back in place. We're going to turn on our preheater and add a little bit more flux on here again. Now we don't need to have a huge amount of flux now for reinstalling the chip, so just a small amount. Just going to break out my hot air gun here just to help melt this guy down. Okay, so I'm going to grab our brand spanking new Mason Touch IC. And we're just going to put that guy right where he needs to go. Okay. Get our heat sinks back in place, and it is go time. We're gonna reinstall this microchip. So, break out my hot air gun here again at 350, and we're gonna start bringing this guy up to temperature here. And again, I'm just watching for other components starting to melt on the board. That's going to give me a really good idea of when the solder under the new microchip has melted. Just going to zoom out here and focus in a little bit more. So I did just see the solder melt here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this guy a little nudge. That is nice and solid. Perfect. And take away our heat, and that is a perfectly installed Touch IC. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this guy reassembled, and I'll come back to you guys to show you a nice functioning touchscreen. Okay guys, welcome back. I have the phone somewhat reassembled here, and I want to show you right now that we have, I'll just go to emergency dialer here. That we have full touch sensitivity, and we can twist the phone, and we have no bouncing bars. So this is a successful Touch IC repair on an iPhone 6 Plus. Thank you guys for watching today, and I will see you next time.